Welcome into Training Camp Live, presented by Xfinity. It's day 8. It's a Sunday, but no rest for the Houston Texans. Are back out on the practice fields over at the Houston Methodist Training Center. Good morning. I'm DP City along with my good friend Drew Doherty. We're going to get you all caught up on camp if you have not been following along. This is actually our first live show that we've done since camp, so you get a live look at the players warming up right there, and that's none other than Connor Weddington.
That's right, with JP5, Jalen Petrie in the background. 82 is Weddington. He's a pass catcher. And you got Petrie, the rookie who has made play after play after play all May, June, now into July and August. He's having a pretty darn good camp and a pretty good start to the preseason. We're going to get into all that a little bit later, aren't we?
We will, and we'll have a one-on-one with Jerry Hughes, not new to the NFL, but new to the Texans. He's in year 13. I went one-on-one with him earlier in the week. But first, let's take a look at some of the players warming up. You mentioned Weddington, Drew. Let's get everyone caught up. First of all, it's day 8. The players were in pads for this is the third day in a row that they were in pads. And actually, this is day 6 if you go back to last week. They've done the entire week in pads. They had Thursday off. Today will be the second set of 3 days in a row of pads. And then tomorrow they've got the day off because it's actually game week. Lovie Smith's going to have the team in game week mode as they head into their first preseason game on Saturday night. I mean, preseason right around the corner. So who's in, who's out for that first preseason game against the Saints? This is all something that we'll be watching out for this week. I think Lovie Smith is giving us some clues. He's giving us some clues about who we might see. I think the big question, you mentioned Jalen Petrie, guys like Derek Stingley, some of the rookies. How much do you think they play on Saturday? They've been, guys like Stingley have been warming up.
Right.
They've been injured. And you've got a few guys that are sort of dinged up there. So those guys you probably won't see in the first preseason game. But Stingley's a full go. Guys like Connor Weddington, by the way, former roommate of Davis Mills at Stanford.
Yeah.
So a little bit of chemistry there.
Big-bodied pass catcher. And, as far as Stingley goes, I think that's a question that's at one of the top questions on a lot of people's mind. I don't think you'll see him on against the Saints when the Texans play the Saints here at NRG Stadium in the preseason opener. He's somebody that still has not gone a full practice all the way. He doesn't do every single drill. He does most of them and seems like he's out there the whole time, but I don't think you'll see him go the full show and be out there for that first game. Now, he might, but I would be mildly surprised, so probably not all the way, but he's one of a few who probably going to hold back and you won't see. And there's number 1, Tremon Smith, alongside Weddington. Tremon, one of the returners, it's coming back, and he's literally a returner. He had a kickoff return for a touchdown last year against Jacksonville. Probably the brightest of the bright spots on the special teams unit. Frank Ross is looking to make that better. So you see these guys getting in line, and there's Stingley, number 24. They're all going to kind of catch some punts, catch some kickoffs right before practice gets going. Looks like it's going to be another hot one. Yesterday was cool. It was like we were at the Greenbrier because the cloud cover kept things nice and crisp. It was like autumn out there, and it was only 82 degrees
Until it started
or something.
pouring on us at the end of practice.
Yes, yeah.
The heat's back. The sun's back out, and there's Stingley along with some of the, like you mentioned, the returners, punt return. Will Stingley return punts? That's a question I get asked a lot. We talked about it on radio. Tremon Smith, obviously number 1. He did it for the Texans last year. There are a bunch of guys in the mix to return kicks. You see number 86 there. That's Chad Beebe. He's also in the mix. Number 38, Jacoby Francis in the mix as well. Every day you see a different grouping of guys, and I think for special teams coordinator Frank Ross, it's all about getting the reps.
Yeah.
He wants to give these guys reps because obviously if somebody goes down with an injury during the season, you don't want to have a new returner out there for the first time who's never done it. So I think just getting all these guys some practice reps, and you never know. I mean, it is an open competition, he said, so you could see a different return man in week 1. You could not. It could be Tremon Smith back out there. I know they liked what they saw in him. They extended him last year as well. So it's something definitely to keep your eye on.
Yeah, and Desmond King did punts, as you see Stingley kind of locked in there. Going to be fun to see what happens. And we'll take your questions, so holler at us. We've got one on Facebook, and he's asking how serious are the current injuries. We just touched on Stingley. It's not too bad, but of the injuries of guys that aren't out there, this is a fairly healthy camp so far. I would say the Texans are looking pretty good in that regard. There's not too many guys that you're not seeing a whole lot of. Early on in camp, Jonathan Grenard wasn't practicing the whole way through, but shoot, just 2 days ago, I think he made the absolute play.
He did. It was
of training camp. Yeah, it was essentially a J.J. Watt pick six from the playoff game not a few years back, a decade back. But rather than being on the left side of the field, He was on the right side of the field, and he was at the 25, the 20. Would have been a 75, 80-yard pick six had it been in real game action because he jumped up, corralled the pass to the flat, and he could have gone the other way had there not been guys standing in the middle of the practice field because it was a training camp practice.
Yeah, you've got guys that were coming off injuries in the offseason. They've all sort of worked their way back into the mix and been ramping up slowly. We've been seeing a lot of them working around in team. But there are a couple of offensive linemen maybe to keep your eye on. Titus Howard, Kenyon Green haven't been practicing. But Lovie Smith said nothing serious. They're going to work their way back. So it's not expected to be serious. But they may miss some time here. They were not at practice yesterday or the day before. A new one that popped up yesterday, linebacker Christian Harris, another rookie who's really flashed in OTAs and in camp and was working with the ones. He was out. He was on the field. He wasn't wearing his helmet or dress. So that's a guy that's not practicing right now. But, of course, I think through camp, these bumps and bruises, they're part of the norm. I mean, they're out there every single day, and this is part of getting in camp shape and getting football ready.
Yeah, as far as Harris, Lovie Smith didn't seem too worried or distraught. Thinks he'll be back.
Right.
You know, he said it was serious enough that he can't practice today. So probably not going to see him for a day or two or three, maybe more. But it sounds like he's going to be able to play in games, and he'll be okay. As you see some of the guys standing around waiting to catch punts and kickoffs and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
but I think as far as we haven't seen any knock on wood, anything serious where someone's been carted off or some major injury like that. So we've seen that around the league a little bit, but not here in Houston. So hopefully that stays the way that it is. Let's get to your next question. Nathan on Facebook wants to know, is Dameon Pierce RB1? Ooh, that's a good question.
Is this a fantasy football question or is this a Texans general question? But either way, it's a good question.
It's a great question, and it's not something we can answer right now because in practice, in team drills, it's Dameon Pierce, it's still Marlon Mack, it's still Rex Burkhead. And I don't think there's a clear-cut number one. Darius Anderson's also running really hard out there. And Lovie Smith said we've got 6 running backs right now in the group. They are all still part of the mix. And this is what camp is about, to see, who sort of elevates himself. I'm not really sure, Drew, that when week 1 starts, if we're going to have a clear RB1 or if it's going to be part of a group effort, because Dameon Pierce is a rookie.
Yeah.
But, all these backs have a little bit of a different skill set. What do you think?
Here's a short answer, and I'm going to give a long answer as well. But short answer, yes, but not yet. Long answer is, like what you mentioned, I think you're going to see all 3 of those first 3 guys, Mack, Burkhead, Pierce, not necessarily in that order, but I think all 3 of them will get starts at running back during the regular season. But I think Pierce is ultimately going to be the guy just because of his youth, the way he runs. I mean, he has flashed in practice. Those other 2 guys are really good and can do good things. Marlon Mack is the only guy who rushed for 1,000 yards while Andrew Luck was quarterback of the Colts. That is a tragedy for the Colts. It's been good for the Texans. But Mack, a few years back, did that in 2018. But it's been a long time since 2018. So we'll see if he can kind of recapture what he had. But I think Pierce, based on what we've seen from him and everything he can do, because he is a good blocker in pass protection.
Yeah.
He is a good pass catcher, and he runs with violence. But he also, I mean, it seems like every day I've seen him have a run or have a catch where he's in, around the line of scrimmage, and he bursts through to the secondary in the blink of an eye. I haven't seen that around here in a long time, and yes, I do think he ultimately will be. But like Pep Hamilton said, he's got to learn how to play running back without the ball, which is all the other stuff that a running back is responsible for. Yeah.
Yeah, you see a little bit of the O-line making their way through. Number 67, Charlie Heck. Number 60, AJ Cann. He was asked about the RBs the other day, and he said that's a tough group. That he likes watching them run. So,
and AJ Cann is an important guy. The offensive lineman just signed. He could be one of the marquee additions in free agency this offseason because he started a lot of games in Jacksonville on the up front. He knows what to do. I think this offensive line can be better. It should be better. It has to be better than what we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, and, certainly want to see them. There's number 31 right there, Dameon Pierce, as the guys get ready to stretch. Number 28, Rex Burkhead. And got a good shot of the running backs there sort of in the mix, as well as some other guys coming out for stretch. I always like watching stretch because you can kind of have your eye on, like, who's talking to who. They're sort of loose, or, you sort of get to know the numbers a little bit. This is what I do in camp. I take attendance every day, and I try to learn the numbers, especially during this part. Kind
of a looser day. I mean, it's not fully padded practice. It's a day off tomorrow. There's no practice. It's Sunday. So, I mean, these guys are kind of, it's a serious day of work, but it's kind of a day that they get to kind of take it, a foot off the accelerator a bit because you're not all the way padded up like you are normally.
Yeah, we're getting a shot at number 89, Johnny Johnson III. He's also been catching passes. And there are your running backs.
Yeah, Pearson Mack on the left.
2-3-1, 2-1-3.
And Rex Burkhead just scooted on in there as well at 28.
Marlon Mack and Dameon Pierce. All right, let's see. Can we hear more about Dameon Pierce? He has been my favorite pickup. Jerome, I don't know, Jerome. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. There he is right now. He goes by DP. That's his nickname. So there's 2 DPs here now, which I don't think I've ever said that before. He runs with a lot of violence. He runs with a lot of joy, according to Nick Caserio. And I know everyone's seen that highlight reel of him when he got drafted when they were playing Florida State and how hard he runs. I think he's excited to see where he can fit into this group. He says he's still a rookie. There's still a lot to learn, but he's right there next to Davis Mills. And, he's going to be a big part of that offense. And I think the question about whether or not he's an RB1, you're right, Drew. I mean, that could be answered within a few weeks. I mean, we're only going to know when they're actually in game mode. Like, camp is fine and all, but you really don't know. The pads are on, but you really don't know until they really get into some game action. So I think it'll be really exciting to see him. Knock on wood, he's been healthy throughout camp and OTA, so I would expect to see him in this first preseason game.
Yeah, Jerome's question's a great one, and I've talked to, over the last week, a few players, few former players who are playing on the offensive side of the ball in the NFL who are very, very impressed with what Pierce has done. We've heard what John Paris has said. We've heard what you and I have said, and Mark Vanderbilt. But guys who have actually been on the field in between the lines, they really recognize what he does and the different gear he has opposed to some of the other guys that are currently in the running backs room with him. So that's going to be such an exciting new element to this offense. And I'm going to go back to it. I'm sorry to beat this drum and beat this dead horse, but Pep Hamilton's offense is going to put not just Davis Mills, but the rest of this team, the rest of this unit, I think, in a better position to succeed because they're going to be a little looser, and there's not as much on everyone's plate mentally as there has been in the last 7-8 years.
Yeah, and it's definitely a point of emphasis to get this run game going.
Yeah.
They cannot do what they want to do.
I mean, they couldn't gain more than 4 yards a carry last year. They've been in the 3s the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, they signed Marlon Mack. They beefed up the interior of the offensive line. It's something that they're definitely going to be aiming for a lot higher this year than in the years past. All right, I'm going to skip around a little bit. Aaron on Facebook wants to know, will Jalen Petrie be the X factor for the defense this year? I think that's a great question. I don't think we talk about Jalen Petrie enough, and we actually talk about Jalen Petrie quite a bit. He's number 5 out there on the field. He is a rookie. Early on in OTAs, you felt like there was something special about him. And that's really continued here in training camp. The other day, he had a great interception that he made a diving leap for. And we consistently see him practicing with the ones. And I wrote about this in one of my things to watch for training camp. Did Lovie Smith accidentally leak that he's the starter? Because he sort of said he's our starting safety, but then he also said we're not giving out starting spots right now. And I thought that was really telling because that's really how they view him. And as a rookie, he's out there. He's calling out formations and plays. He's communicating from the sidelines. He's communicating on the field. He really doesn't seem like a rookie out there.
Look, it makes sense. I mean, if you look at what he did in college, he was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He was around the ball almost all the time. And he was sort of not a positionless guy, but a guy who could do a lot of different things on your defense. So, yeah, I think X factor in a good way, sure. He could be a definite X factor just because of all the different positions. Like I talked about, he can play safety, sort of a line backer, nickel backer, maybe a little bit of corner from time to time. He's an intriguing chess piece, I think, for Lovie Smith in this defense.
All right, let's keep it on the defense here for a minute. Rob on YouTube wants to know, will Christian Harris be a starter?
Is it Rob or is it Rube? Either way, I like.
I mistype things all the time, but that was not me, so I wasn't going to call it out.
Well, he's got to be healthy first.
He's got to be healthy.
There's definitely a chance. I mean, he's got that speed that we've heard about, the game speed, but Christian Harris certainly has a chance to be a starter. I mean, just about all these guys that have played or been rookies over the last year or so have a chance to come in and be starters and contribute in quite a big manner.
He was one of the guys that Lovie said during OTAs was practicing with the ones, getting first-team reps, and we've seen that continue. It's amazing that he only started playing linebacker at Alabama. But, I think that SEC-level competition is really panning out for these guys because they're coming in, they're picking up the offense. They're going against, these backs and going against the offense here in camp. And it's been a battle every single day, but they've liked what they've seen out of Christian Harris. But, yeah, he's got to be healthy. So, hopefully he's back on the field sooner rather than later. It sounds like it's nothing too serious.
That's,
and there's
AJ
number 60
Cann,
right there,
he's
AJ
offensive
Cann.
lineman,
Yeah, he's new to the Texans, not new to the NFL. He's reunited with George Warhop, his offensive line coach, who was his offensive line coach in Jacksonville, where he started a number of games at guard. So the Texans really hope that he can be a part of this interior along with Justin Britt and some of the other the veterans on the O-line. They're veterans now, Titus Howard and, of course, Larry Tunsil.
There's another veteran.
Charlie Heck.
Charlie Heck, yeah. It's hard to believe he's a veteran, but, yeah, he's a guy who's gotten some starting experience out on the right side. Number 76, Austin Deculus, a local guy, homegrown from H-Town, so he's getting his work in. And you see those bubbles. I've had a lot of people ask me that haven't been around a camp, or been out to practice. What's on those guys' helmets? What is that? And J.J. Watt, former Texan, he kind of jokingly said it's a helmet for your helmet. But they believe, or there's been studies that say that those things on there reduce concussions by 20%. So we'll see if that works and see if that makes things better. But it's
Guardian
essentially
caps.
Guardian caps to kind of lessen the blows or deaden the blows that these guys down in the trenches, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, receive on a regular basis. All
right, speaking of defensive line, Charles on YouTube wants to know, how has the defensive line looked? And it's a position of a lot of depth right now on the Texans. Lovie Smith likes his D-line group. I mean, you've got guys like, we talked about John Grenard earlier, Roy Lopez, we heard from the other day, and then a bunch of new additions in Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison. I mean, it's a pretty deep
Malik
group.
Collins is
Malik
the engine.
Collins.
I mean, that's he was
Best
described
three
as the
technique.
engine, by Lovie Smith. So.
Yeah, best three technique in the league. That's what Roy Lopez said the other day. I asked Roy, I said, did you tell Malik that he's the best three technique? And he said, yeah, but he knows.
right. And that confidence there.
He's got a lot of, but these D linemen, they actually got together. They practiced together in the offseason. They've really worked together to sort of build that chemistry. They worked out in Arizona, I think Michigan. They worked out in Houston as well. So I think what's really tremendous about this group is even the young guys, they've had a lot of experience. The John Grenards, the Roy Lopez's, Ross Blacklock. They've only been here for a few years, but they seem to really fit into this scheme with Lovie Smith's defense.
Very competitive unit for sure. There's going to be somebody good that doesn't wind up making it just because of the numbers and the quality that you think you have there on the defensive line. And, Jerry Hughes, who you got to talk with, and we're going to hear from him in just a bit.
Yeah, and Rasheem Green, don't want to forget about him.
Oh, yeah, Rasheem Green. So one of those guys that I was talking with that used to play in the NFL who was really impressed with Pierce, he was raving about Green. And he loved that the Texans can line him up all over the defensive line, inside, outside, and he can do some damage, and he can take advantage of some of those capabilities and abilities that he has. So keep it. That's an under-the-radar guy, Rasheem Green. We were asked about X factors earlier.
Okay.
That's certainly a guy who could be an X factor. Came to the Texans from Seattle, had 6, 7, 8 sacks last year. You add that to the mix with what Grenard was able to do and what some of these other guys are able to do, and the Texans could see that pressures number rise. And if the pressures rise, likely the takeaways rise. Because if you're putting the quarterback under duress, he's going to make bad decisions.
I mean, that's the goal. And I think that you're going to see a big rotation of guys.
Totally.
In the mix. John Grenard was talking about it. They were asking him what he thought about that. He said, look, if we can all be fresh and we can go out there, we have to make the most of the plays that we are out there. So that's the goal, is to get guys in and out fresh. Keep the offensive line guessing, the opposing offensive line. So, and Grenard is one of those guys that, here he is. What is it, year 3? Year 3 for him, sack leader for the Texans last year, expecting a lot of things from him. Also expecting a lot of things from his fellow D lineman, Jerry Hughes, who he's been learning quite a bit from. I had a chance to catch up with Jerry earlier in the week. It's a Deep Slant 1-1 presented by Xfinity. Joining me today, fresh off the practice field, Jerry Hughes, year 13. How's camp gone for you so far, Jerry?
So far, it's gone really well, actually. Really enjoying being out here in the heat, in the elements, working with the guys. We talk about putting in this sweat equity now to kind of get the results that we can get later on in the season. So it's been a lot of fun.
You're new to the Texans, obviously, not new to Texas. You grew up in Sugar Land. So I got to ask, did you move right back to Sugar Land, or are you living somewhere else now?
I'm living somewhere else right now. I just had to give myself some space from the city where I kind of grew up in. I kind of wanted to see more of the city of Houston. When you kind of live out there, you really don't get a chance to enjoy what the city of Houston has. So I kind of want to get closer to out here and just enjoy everything for its greatness.
I'm not going to ask you your exact address or anything, but coming back to Houston, coming back to Texas, I should say, what did you miss most about living here?
The food, man. I mean, it's hard to go without that delicious barbecue. I mean, we have some of the best brisket out here, and you can always find a fantastic steakhouse every corner here. So, I mean, just mainly the food. The fans are always electric here, and that's what we got to bring back is just that winning atmosphere just to kind of keep them happy and satisfied. But for a guy like me who's always in the trenches, it's always going to be the food.
This offseason, you talked a lot about the attitude you want to bring to the defensive line group. You and Mario Addison, you guys played together in Buffalo. Tell me a little bit about that, what you want to bring to the group as a whole, what you want to do with this defense on the field under Jacques Césaire and Lovie Smith.
Yeah, we got to just let the guys understand and just bring more of an importance to our side of the ball. In order for us to be a successful organization, a playoff organization, we got to come out here and be a top 5 unit. And why settle for the top 5? Let's be the best unit out here. So I think we're trying to instill that into guys now that, we got to come out here and work to be the best, because that's the only way we're going to be a winning team or even a playoff organization is through our side of the ball, and certainly up front with the O-line and that D-line play.
Let's talk about some of the guys in the room. John Grenard was telling us yesterday, he talks to you and Mario. Rio, he calls him, just working on his pass rush moves. What sort of veteran leadership do you bring to that room? Even though you're new to the team, you've been in this league for a long time.
Yeah, just helping the guys out with just technique, things that we see on film, things that kind of will just help elevate their game, allow them to play faster, and then also the recovery aspect. Mario and myself, both 13, 12 years in the league, we understand the importance of taking care of our body. We always say that, we're high-performance engine. So in order for us to come out here and play fast and do well, you got to do the right things off the field. So whenever they ask questions about, tissue things, or how to recover faster, we're always in their ear, just helping those guys out because they're young now, so they can put it in now, and on the back end, we can get by week 18, everybody flying around playing fast in this heat. It's going to be great for us.
Is that one of the pieces of advice that you had been given as a rookie or that you wish you had known?
Oh, certainly as a rookie. I was very fortunate to play with guys like Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis, Peyton Manning, Reggie White, guys where you saw where they were staying late at the facility doing all the extra things for their body so they can come out here and not only practice fast but then play even faster on Sundays. And, I even got the luxury of training with Andre Johnson and, watching someone like himself being a 10-year vet, he's out here running on the track, doing those little things in the offseason even to kind of just make sure he's ready for the football season. We wanted to make sure that we were here for all that offseason work so those guys understand that those days do count and they certainly matter on the back end of any season.
Andre Johnson's been out here at camp as well. Have you had a chance to catch up with him?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I've seen him around. It's great that he's here, just not only just being here just to kind of impact us, but just dropping whatever help he can. I mean, he's another Hall of Famer that we have that certainly we have at really to our discretion. And so someone that we can kind of pick his brain on, ask any kind of things where it comes from the wide receiver position on just what it takes to just be great. He has all that information there for us.
What's it like playing for Jacques Césaire? It's obviously Lovie Smith's defense, but playing for a position coach that you've played for in the past, how much easier is that transition for you? Or does it really not even matter at this stage in your career? You're able to pick up defenses?
Oh, it helps tremendously. Just having a guy who's not only a great coach, but a former player. So, the way he views the game it's a little bit differently, but we as players can identify the way he's coaching, the way he's giving us tips throughout the practice days and even in our meetings, and I think it's allowing a lot of guys to kind of free up and play fast and just think more about football than more so their technique. And I think when you have a coach like that who's able to not only coach technique but allow you to learn football, it turns out to be a great special unit.
All right, Jerry, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Good stuff from Jerry Hughes entering year 13 back in H-Town.
Yeah.
He's from Sugar Land, Texas, so he's happy to be home. Not new to the Houston Heat.
DP, I feel so old because I remember when Jerry Hughes was getting into the league. Before he got into the league, I was at the Senior Bowl in Mobile when he was there, and you could definitely hear Jerry Hughes from the sidelines. He was a very vocal guy. At a time when a lot of guys are kind of quiet as mice and just want to put their heads down and play and practice, this guy on the practice field was making some noise, and it's paid off for him. He's had a good decade-long career in the NFL, and he's looking for more.
Yeah, and he wants to pass that wisdom down to some of the younger guys, as well as just bring a different attitude to this D-line group, and they're ready for it. All right, there's Marlon Mack jogging off.
Number 2.
You can see some of the offense getting together. It looks like they might do some work here, or they might run to the sidelines. We saw Davis Mills warming up a little bit earlier. We have not gotten to a Davis Mills question yet.
Can I read this one, please?
Oh,
just this
course.
one. Just because it jumped out at me. It's Nathan on Facebook. I'm going to read it in a different voice, though, okay? Because this is how I read it when I saw
Feel
it.
free, yes.
And here it is. Everyone ready? From Nathan on Facebook. Is Davis Mills ready to put the league on notice?
Well, I
It's
think
pretty serious.
I think you're gonna have to ask Davis Mills that. But if you're asking if he looks good, I think
Yeah, he's
from
looked good.
year 1 to year 2, he looks like he's made a pretty significant leap. He's done a lot of things this offseason to get ready for year 2.
Yep.
I mean, he knew coming into the season that this was going to be his team. This was going to be his offense. Lovie Smith said so. And so he took it actually, he took it seriously even before the end of last year, before the
Sure.
season even wrapped up. He got the guys together. They had throwing sessions out in Atlanta. They went up to Oregon about a week before camp started. And in between all that time, he continued to work on his chemistry with them. He also, there he is jogging. He also bulked up a little bit. I don't know if you can tell in the shorts, but he said he put on some weight, put on some muscle, some lower body strength. He wanted to be able to withstand hits, but I mean, I got to say, I was talking to Andre Ware, our Texans play-by-play, who also played quarterback, and he said, when you bulk up in your legs and put on some weight muscle there, that's also going to help with your power. So
Sure.
the way that he's getting his throws off really quick, really accurate, he just seems a lot more decisive. And I know it wasn't that long ago that we saw him in camp as a rookie. It's a huge difference from last year. So you just hope that he can build on what he was able to do late in the season in games.
Yeah, there are several things working in his favor for improvement in 2021 over to 2022. You just mentioned the bulking up. That's one aspect. You also mentioned the trip to Oregon, getting chemistry with his receivers, his pass catchers, his tight ends. That's very, very key. They had done stuff in Atlanta, I believe, and here in Houston as well. So they weren't just kind of chilling in between the end of OTAs and the start of training camp. They were actually getting work in. Those are some things working in his favor for improvement. Also, he knows this Pep Hamilton offense. It's similar to what he ran at Stanford. It's simpler than what has been run around here over the last decade. He was in Hamilton's office all offseason, starting when Hamilton got elevated to offensive coordinator from passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach last year. He was helping install that thing with Pep. So he knows what works, and he knows what his favorite stuff is and what puts him in a good position. And the offensive line, I think, will be a little bit better. There's stability there at the tackle spots. Lovie Smith has said, many other players have said, I don't think you're going to find a better tackle tandem in the NFL than Titus Howard, and over on the left side, the Pro Bowler in Laramie Tunsil. So there's several things working in his favor. I do think the run game will be better. What does a good quarterback need? A good run game to help him out and take some pressure off him. So several things will help him out. I don't know if it's going to put the league on notice. That might be extreme, but I do think he's going to be better, and I think the Texans will be better because of that improvement by Davis Mills.
All right, well, let's keep along with the offense here. Steve on Facebook wants to know, what will be the difference with the offense with Pep Hamilton? We saw Pep Hamilton there a little while ago. He was talking to some of the offensive players. I mean, I think that remains to be seen. We've asked Pep about it several times. He says you'll just have to wait and see. But just knowing from what Pep Hamilton has run in the past, at Stanford with the Colts and wherever he's been, he definitely uses a lot more tight ends in his offense. And that's something Brevin Jordan was really excited about. Number 9, you see him there. You see the tight ends, they're actually working with Davis Mills right now. And, I think you really hit the nail on the head. It's going to be simpler. It's going to be a very different offense. So I think he'll know. I think the beauty of having Pep here is that it's not just going to be Pep Hamilton's offense, but he knows what Davis Mills' strengths are. And I think he's going to build his offense and sort of tweak it to fit Mills' strengths and weaknesses.
And I need to be more specific. It's going to be simpler to process. It might not be simpler, but it's just simpler for the players to process and put into action. And I think that's a very big deal. I mean, we saw 2010 to 2011 when the Texans changed defensive coordinators. It got a lot simpler when Wade Phillips came in, and that defense was one of the best defenses in team history, if not the best. So it's sort of like along similar lines. They're hoping. I'm not saying that the Texans offense is going to be the best offense in the league by any stretch, but making that transition or having that transition ought to open things up, free up your playmakers, because Pep Hamilton has said he wants to take advantage of the strengths of his players, put them in position to succeed. So we'll see. We'll see with all that with the offensive line.
Hey, and if you haven't had a chance, you should check out Houston Texans on Instagram, on Twitter. I mean, they've got the Pep Hamilton Pep Talk of the day. They've been really, really good. So Pep giving his Pep Talk every single day, so you get a glimpse of what it's like to.
Did you know he worked at a Pep Boys way back in the day?
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, he did.
Pep at Pep Boys, yeah.
Welcome to Pep Boys. My
There he
name
is, Pep Hamilton. I think he's hoping to really turn this offense around. They were very low in the league, the bottom of the league in scoring last year, and he was on staff. He was not the offensive coordinator, but he wants to turn things around and tweak this offense to make it his own. All right, let's get to one more question before we wrap up. Juan on Facebook, has a particular wide receiver looked like the number 2 starter yet in camp? I've got to say, Drew, I mean, I don't usually comment on these things, but if Brandon Cooks is your number one, you got to put Nico Collins at number two. Like, you just have to. I mean, he's in year 2. He's so tall. He just seems, there he is, number 12. He has come down with pretty much every catch we've seen him, and it's very hard to defend against him. I like watching the wide receiver DB drills. I mean, he's using his length and his height to his advantage, his athleticism. He seems to come down, and Davis Mills has a lot of trust in him and a lot of chemistry. They really work together well in the offseason. So I'd put Nico at number 2.
I'll be Conrad Contrarian to you today. He's not a wide receiver, technically, but he's not a traditional tight end. Brevin Jordan they've fed Brevin Jordan. I mean, he has gotten the ball a whole heck of a lot. So, I mean, wide receiver, no, that's not his position, but pass catcher, I think it seems like he's caught the second amount of passes, if not more. And so look out for Brevin Jordan, okay?
Yeah, I agree with you there. And Brevin Jordan, I mean, are you giving fantasy predictions if you want to pick up a tight end in fantasy?
Maybe.
It might be a Pep Hamilton offense. You might see a lot of tight ends scoring touchdowns. I don't know. You have to see, because you know what? Preseason is happening on Saturday. You'll get your first look at the Houston Texans on the field when they host the New Orleans Saints here at NRG Stadium. We'll actually have our pregame show back.
Yeah.
Drew will be back. I'll be back. We'll show you a live look at the players on the field. We'll probably have some updates on who's playing and who's not. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. We're going to head out to practice. You can check out HoustonTexans.com for all of our coverage. And, of course, Texans All Access starts again tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Drew and I will be on at 9 a.m. giving our thoughts on camp. But that's going to do it for Training Camp Live, presented by Xfinity. Special thanks to everyone that worked on this show, including Amanda Caffey, Tyler Marcotte, and Jonathan out there on the field with the camera, manning the camera out there. So
JJ, yeah.
JJ's out there as well. And
Haley
to all of you
Carroll,
watching.
Tyler Suddarth, Jared Huff, all that crew.
I know. See, I always leave people out, and then Drew, this is what Drew is good for. He'll just name everybody else.
I remember a few names sometimes.
Yeah, well, we remember all of you. So thank you so much for watching. And as always, go Texans.